All right, we're gonna do more of the secret of the golden flower. We're gonna read chapter 4, and we're gonna. I was reading the introduction to Thomas Cleary's translation last night, and I started to get a little critical of him, and then after I did the video, I was like, maybe I shouldn't read this translation, because the one that we started with, I believe it's by Maria Esposito, is very good, so why would we read one that I'm not sure about? But then someone said, Thomas Cleary, he was a great translator, and if you look at his Wikipedia information, he translated like 80 different he did 80 different translations, did all these translations of Taoist texts, of Buddhist texts, even of Islamic texts, and and he was Harvard educated, etc., etc. So he probably knew his stuff, but maybe he also he went for breadth rather than depth. Who knows? And maybe this translation, and also the fact is that this translation was published by a major publisher. So, you would think that he probably would have done a good job, pretty much. I don't know what kind of peer review they have, before they publish stuff, but I'm sure it was peer reviewed to some extent. So with that said, we're going to read Turning the Light Around and Tuning the Breathing, chapter 4, and this is Thomas Cleary's translation. Here we go. The doctrine just requires and he numbered the sections. So this is number 1. The doctrine just requires single-minded practice. One does not seek experiential proof, but experiential proof comes of itself. Single-minded practice. In Sanskrit, there's a word ekagrata, means one-pointed focus, staying one-pointed to the goal. So single-minded practice or one-pointed focus, the experiential proof will come of itself. You don't need to seek it, and probably if you do try to seek it, you won't get it because your ego will be in the way there. All right, number 2, on the whole, beginners suffer from 2 kinds of problems: oblivion and distraction. There is a device to get rid of them, which is simply to rest the mind on the breath. Focusing on the breath. 3, the breath is one's own mind. One's own mind does the breathing. Once mind stirs, then there's energy. Energy is basically an emanation of mind. So the breath is one's own mind. Once the mind stirs, then there's energy. Energy is basically an emanation of mind. Maybe this will become clear as we read. Number 4, our thoughts are very rapid. A single random thought takes place in a moment, whereupon an exhalation and inhalation respond to it. Therefore, inward breathing and outward breathing accompany each other like sound and echo. In a single day, one breathes countless times, so has countless random thoughts. When the luminosity of spirit has leaked out completely, one is like a withered tree or dead ashes. So our thoughts are very rapid. This is something the Course in Miracles says as well, is that we don't understand the power of our mind, right? And we do have a lot of distracting thoughts, and a lot of thoughts that are, if we attach to them, they're not helpful, and they do kind of dissipate our energy. All right, we'll go on. Number 5. So should one have no thoughts? It is impossible to have no thoughts. should one not breathe? It is impossible not to breathe. Nothing compares to making the affliction itself into medicine, which means to have mind and breath rest on each other. Therefore, tuning the breath should be included in turning the light around. Turning the light around was the last section. So we're tuning the breath. You can't stop breathing and you can't stop thinking, right? It's impossible while you're here in a body. But what you can do is rest the mind in the breath, and I guess the breath in the mind. And I guess that's tuning the breath. 6, this method makes use of 2 lights. One is the light of the ears, one is the light of the eyes. The light of the eyes means the external sun and moon, combining their lights. The light of the ears means the internal sun and moon, combining their vitalities. However, vitality is congealed and stabilized light. Quote, they have the same source but different names, unquote. Therefore, clarity of hearing and seeing are both one and the same spiritual light. So, the light of the ears, the light of the eyes. The light of the eyes is the external sun and moon, and the light of the ears is the internal sun and moon. Clarity of hearing and seeing are both one and the same spiritual light. This probably would take a little thought to figure this one out. Maybe someone can comment on that one. Number 7, all this is, I'm probably just kind of touching on some of the more, obvious things. Paragraph 7, when you sit, lower your eyelids and then establish a point of reference. Now let go, but if you let go absolutely, you may not be able to simultaneously keep your mind on listening to your breathing. So when you sit, lower your eyelids and then establish a point of reference. I think this is referring again to gazing at the tip of the nose with your eyes half closed, right? You have a point of reference and then you let go. You establish that, but then you let go. But if you let go absolutely, you may not be able to simultaneously keep your mind on listening to your breathing. So you don't want to let go so much that you can't still listen to your breathing. I guess, I don't know. Number 8, you should not allow your breathing to actually be audible. Just listen to its soundlessness. Once there is sound, you are buoyed by the coarse and do not enter the fine. Then be patient and lighten up a little. The more you let go, the greater the subtlety, and the greater the subtlety, the deeper the quietude. I don't know if you've ever been in a room where people are meditating and a lot of times there's that one person who's like breathing, who's like breathing kind of heavily while they're meditating and like as if to help them to focus. But you don't want to do that. You can do that. Maybe more. It's better when you're alone. Do that, not in a group. But you want to really get your breath to being very still, and then your mind becomes very still. It works both ways. When your breath is still, your mind becomes still, and also when your mind is still, your breath will be still. So and I think this is what this is getting at as well. And you do want to go. You want to move from the coarse or the gross to the subtle, the fine. Number 9. Eventually, after a long time, all of a sudden, even the subtle will be interrupted and the true breathing will appear, whereupon the substance of mind will become perceptible. So you reach the state in your meditation, it says after a long time, that when you make your mind and your breath subtle, or your breath subtle, your true breathing will come. And your mind will reveal itself. I think this is what this is saying. 10, this is because when mind is subtle, breath is subtle. When mind is unified, it moves energy. When breath is subtle, mind is subtle. So it's saying, what I just said. It's, when your mind is subtle, your breath is subtle. When your breath is subtle, your mind is subtle. When energy is unified, it moves mind. Stabilization of mind must be preceded by development of energy because the mind has no place to set to work on. So focus on energy. So focus on energy is used as a starting point. This is what is called the preservation of pure energy. It's not clear what it means by energy, though. I don't know what the word, what this is. I'm sure just one translation of what energy is, whatever the Chinese character is, or characters. Anyway, we'll go on. Number 11, you don't understand the meaning of the word movement. Movement is pulling the strings. The word movement is another word for control. Since you can cause movement by vigorous action, how could you not be able to cause stillness by pure quietude? You don't understand the meaning of the word movement. Movement is pulling the strings. The word movement is another word for control. Since you can cause movement by vigorous action, how could you not be able to cause stillness by pure quietude? So I think this is getting at, the mind control, controlling your mind through becoming quiet and listening and getting more and more subtle. Something like that. I don't know. Okay, we're going to go on. Number 12, the great sages saw the interrelation of mind and energy and skillfully set up an expedient for the benefit of people of later times. An alchemical text says, quote, the hen embraces the egg, always mentally listening. These are the finest instructions. The way a hen can give life to an egg is through warm energy. Warm energy can only warm the shell and cannot penetrate the inside, so she mentally conducts the energy inward. That, quote, listening, unquote, is single-minded concentration. When the mind enters, the energy enters. With warm energy, the birth takes place. So this is making an analogy using a quote from an alchemical text. The hen embraces the egg, always mentally listening. So the hen, in order to give birth to the chick, has to really focus inwardly, concentrate inwardly. And so too on the spiritual, what this is getting at is to give birth, we really have to focus single-minded concentration. We have to have a single-minded concentration. And there's a warm energy and the birth takes place. 13, therefore, even though the mother hen goes out from time to time, she is always listening and the concentration of her spirit is never interrupted. Since the concentration of the spirit is never interrupted, when the warm energy is also uninterrupted day and night, so the spirit comes alive. So the mother hen, comes and goes, but she's always there. She's always listening. She's always attentive to her unborn, chick, and this is uninterrupted. And this is what we have to do too. And that's the kind of one-pointed or single-minded concentration we have to have. So even if we're not, sitting, for example, and doing our meditation practice, but we're still, whatever we're doing a moving meditation, right? Everything becomes a moving meditation. 14, the life of the spirit comes from the prior death of the mind. If people can kill the mind, the original comes alive. Killing the mind does not mean quietism, it means undivided concentration. Buddha said, quote, place the mind on one point and everything can be done. It's a great quote. I've never seen that. Place the mind on one point and everything can be done. So again, the idea of becoming one-pointed. And there is a concept of the bindu, the point, right? The point of existence. And you focus and you try to become so one-pointed in your concentration that you transcend, right? And this is not killing the mind as we usually think of it. And we oftentimes talk about killing the ego, but this is not saying killing or destroying the ego or the mind. It means you concentrate, right, to the extent that the mind recedes, or dissolves, you might say. When you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. But it's not. This is all metaphorical language. It's not really. You're not really killing anything. 15. If the mind tends to run off, then unify it by means of the breath. If the breath tends to become rough, then use the mind to make it fine. If you do this, how can the mind fail to stabilize? So this is just, this is like meditation 101 here, right? If your mind gets diverted, if you start to think about this or that, you bring your mind back to the breath. If your breath becomes rough or agitated, then you use your mind to still the breath. And then, it works both ways. Stilling the breath, mind becomes still. Stilling the mind, the breath becomes more still. 16. Generally speaking, the two afflictions of oblivion and distraction, that's what it started with, right? Talking about how beginners have these two afflictions, oblivion and distraction. They just require quieting practice to continue unbroken day after day until complete cessation and rest occur spontaneously. When you are not sitting quietly, you may be distracted without knowing it, but once you are aware of it, distraction itself becomes a mechanism for getting rid of distraction. So, you just notice when your mind, this is my take on what this is saying. You notice when your mind starts to get agitated, whenever it starts to get agitated, whenever it starts to become, your breath becomes rough or your breath becomes agitated, your mind becomes agitated, you use that as a opportunity to deepen into this practice. 17. As for unawares oblivion and oblivion of which you become aware, there is an inconceivable distance between them. Unawares oblivion is real oblivion. Oblivion that you notice is not completely oblivious. Clear light is in this. So, I take this to mean that when you notice that you have become unconscious, right, or that you've become lost in space, or whatever it might be, you become aware of it. And you bring your mind back, right? So that's not real oblivion. It's not complete oblivion. Whereas if you didn't notice, it would be true oblivion. Number 18, distraction means the spirit is racing. Oblivion means the spirit is unclear. Distraction is easy to cure. Oblivion is hard to heal. Using the metaphor of illness, one that involves pain or itch can be treated with medicine, but oblivion is a symptom of paralysis where there is no feeling. So distraction means the spirit is racing. Oblivion means the spirit is unclear. Distraction is easy to cure. Oblivion is hard to heal. Using the metaphor of illness, one that involves pain or itch can be treated with medicine, but oblivion is a symptom of paralysis where there is no feeling. So distraction is easier to deal with. Oblivion is harder. Now, what it means by oblivion, even though I tried to say what it probably meant, but I'm not sure, Is it like a form of unconsciousness where you just become unconscious? You kind of just get lost. Maybe oblivion. What I would suggest it is that you get so deep into your ego that you do suffer a kind of ego paralysis, right? Where you can't get easily out of it. It's like when you like when you get agitated, when you get mad about something or upset about something, it's hard to get out of that, right? you're you're not, it's, if you're really deep in it, you're not going to get out of it anytime soon. It's going to require some work to get back to your loving, quiet center. Your state of loving presence. 19. A distracted mind can be concentrated, and a confused mind can be set in order, but oblivion is unformed darkness in contrast to distraction, which still has some direction. So that's kind of just a reiteration of the previous. 20. Oblivion means the lower soul is in complete control, which I just call it the ego, whereas the lower soul is a lingering presence in distraction. Oblivion is ruled by pure darkness and negativity. So, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to read more, but I think I was onto something there with talking about how we can get so deep into our ego that it's hard to get out again, right? And it's just very difficult to extract ourselves once we've given the ego mind or the lower self energy. Then we can get stuck there for a while, right? 21. When you are sitting quietly, if you become drowsy, this is oblivion. Repelling oblivion is simply a matter of tuning the breath. The quote breath, unquote, in this case is respiration, not the true breathing, not the quote unquote true breathing. Nevertheless, the true breathing is present within it. So now it's defining oblivion as partly when you become drowsy, when you're meditating. You're in a state of oblivion, not just distraction. You're in a state of oblivion. But again, you go back to tuning the breath. And the breath is not the true breathing yet, because you're not in that place yet. You're moving toward that place of quieting the mind to the extent that you get into that true breathing, where you discover what it calls true breathing, whatever that means exactly. We're not sure, but all right. 22. Whenever you sit, you should quiet your mind and unify your energy. How is the mind quieted? The mechanism is in the breathing, but the mind alone knows you are breathing out and in. Do not let the ears hear. When you don't hear it, the breathing is fine. And when breathing is fine, the mind is clear. If you can hear it, the breathing is rough, which means the mind is cloudy. Cloudiness means oblivion, so it is natural to feel sleepy. Even so, the mind should be kept on the breathing. So you want to, this is again, reiterating what was said before, which is that you want to make your breathing so fine, so subtle that you don't even hear it anymore. If you do hear it, the breathing is rough, and you wanna try to make it more subtle. If the breathing is rough, I guess rough means like agitated. The mind is agitated. The mind is cloudy, it says, and that's a form of oblivion. It's not just distraction; it's oblivion. And then you might feel sleepy. You want to keep coming back to the breathing. You want to keep focused on the breathing. 23, it is also essential to understand that this device is not mechanical or forced. Just maintain a subtle looking and listening. Right? You don't want to force it. You don't want to try too hard. You want to do it without a sense of effortlessness. and you just want to be present. It's just sitting there and just observing, calmly observing. 24. What is, quote, looking, unquote? It is the light of the eyes spontaneously shining, the eyes only looking inward and not outward. Not looking outward, yet being alert, is inward looking. It is not that there really is such a thing as looking inward. This is an interesting point. When we say you look within yourself, what does that mean? Can you look within yourself? And this seems to be saying, no, that's a figure of speech. What you're really doing is you're not looking outward, but you're alert, and you're your mind is turned inward. It's not that you're looking inward. It's not like you can see inside yourself or something like that. But you are alert, and you're not focused on the externals. You're not focused on seeing, or I guess other senses as well, right? You're just focused on being alert, calmly aware, and with your mind turning not outward but more inward. 25. What is, quote, listening, unquote? It is the light of the ears spontaneously listening. The ears only listening inward and not outward. Not listening outward, yet being alert, is inward listening. It is not that there really is such a thing as listening inward. So it's basically saying the same thing, just with the hearing. 26. Listening means listening to the soundless. Looking means looking at the formless. So the soundless and the formless. Listening, you're listening to the soundless. Looking means looking at the formless. So what does that mean? You're not hearing anything and you're not seeing anything, because the soundless is without sound and the formless is without form. So you're not really looking at anything or listening to anything. You are staying in that space of alert inward observation, where you're not you're moving beyond the sensory apparatus. 27. When the eyes do not look outside and the ears do not listen outside, they are closed in and have a tendency to race around inside. Only by inward looking and listening can you prevent this inner racing as well as oblivion in between. This is the meaning of sun and moon combining their vitalities and lights. So the inner racing, it kind of said before that distraction is inner racing, right? So I think that's what it means here, is that only by inward looking and listening can you prevent this distractedness, as well as oblivion. This is the meaning of the sun and the moon combining their vitalities and lights. So the inward looking and listening is the sun and the moon, I guess, coming together. And let me just say that in the world of yoga, we have Hatha Yoga, and Ha is the sun and Ta is the moon. That's generally the way it's understood. And it's the marriage of the sun and the moon is Hatha Yoga. Yes. So yeah, it seems to be what it's saying. The bringing together the seeing and the hearing. Let those with eyes to see it, and let those with ears to hear. Something like that, right? It's a form of seeing and hearing or listening that we're not used to, and we're getting, it's moving us beyond the senses and into a place of quiet looking, you could say. It seems to be what it's saying. I can only say this based on my own experience, what I've heard before. 28. When you sink into oblivion and become drowsy, get up and take a walk. When your spirit is cleared, sit again. It's best to sit for a while in the early morning when you have free time. After noontime, when there are many things to do, it's easy to fall into oblivion. So meditate in the morning, in other words. Also, there's no need to fix the length of time of meditation. It is only essential to set aside all involvements and sit quietly for a while. Eventually, you will attain absorption and not become oblivious or sleepy. So the drowsiness is a big one, for meditators. If you wake up in the morning and you meditate, you're less likely to become drowsy because you've been sleeping, right? You're more likely to be alert if you do it, right when you get up is probably the best time generally. And I know in the yoga tradition, from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., those 3-hour period is supposed to be very ideal and very auspicious for spiritual practice, including meditation. You sit for meditation until the sun rises, basically. But this is also saying that it's not essential that you say, I have to sit for 20 minutes right now, or I have to sit for an hour or however long, but you just sit for as long as you can, maybe until the drowsiness comes, or until the oblivion comes. But as long as you have quality, it's not about quantity, it's quality. I think that's what it's getting at. Quality over quantity. So, and that's the end of the chapter. The doctrine just requires single-minded practice. One does not seek experiential proof, but experiential proof comes of itself. What can we say about all this? I think, this is a guide to meditation, and a lot of the principles here are things that we already know. You still, by stilling your breath, you still your mind, and when your mind becomes more still, your breath will become more still, and you will open up into a deeper space of awareness. And when your mind gets distracted, you bring it back to the breath. And if you're oblivious, you get up and take a walk. If you get into oblivion, you can do different things, it suggests. And these are things that the beginners have difficulty with: distraction and oblivion, right? And then the one-pointedness, the one-pointed focus is what we're working towards. So anyway, that was just a little bit. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know. Feel free to bring your comments and suggestions and so on. I really enjoy what everyone has been sharing, and it's really nice to hear all the comments and so on. So feel free to leave them, and I'm going to do chapter 5. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to it tomorrow. We'll see. But I'm going to keep going with this, so we'll get it done in the next couple weeks. All right. Thank you.